better their lives and improve this great city for which we are grateful. We so thank thee in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Greg. I know we've got the Pledge of Allegiance on the agenda, but I don't have a flag handy. It's out hanging on the house. Let's go ahead and bypass that for the time being. I'll come up with the flag, Lon.
We are grateful. We so thank thee in the name of Jesus.
Okay. Allegiance on the agenda, but I don't have a flag handy. It's out hanging on the house.
Someone's playing their YouTube video in the background, which has a delay on it. So if you have that, turn that off.
But that might be the 7-second radio delay. Prevent us from getting in trouble. Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar. Are there any thoughts or discussions, questions on the bond releases or any other items on the consent calendar or on the minutes?
On item G, I need to give you the amount. I sent an email out just tonight, but it's $171,342.67.
And Shane, I saw on there that it looked like it was originally targeted to maybe be completed by like June 30, and are they running behind? Was there a cause or plan for that?
We gave them a couple more weeks. They actually paved today. They're probably finishing about right now. And then there's a few driveway approaches to be poured and some cleanup. So it's moving along. It's fine.
And then on the
Thanks.
on the final item, item J, for those of you who don't know, that's the entrance that goes between the State Center and that first house in Bennett Farms, Upper Bennett Farms. They'll pave that all the way back to the parking lot, which is road base, but it'll help eliminate some of the drainage issues we're having back there that occur just about daily. It'll also keep us consistent with the policy that cars are allowed on pavement only in Lambert Park or designated parking areas. So I'll keep it paved right up to the entrance of the parking lot. Jason, did you have anything that needed to be adjusted on the minutes?
I did, but I forwarded them on to Bonnie already, so those are taken care of.
Okay. All right, we'll entertain a motion. Lon, you trying to make a motion, but you're muted.
I make a motion that we approve the consent calendar with the notation of the corrections that Jason has made, as well as the ones I sent in to Bonnie, which were more name spellings and things like that. No content per se change. Jason, did yours have content change, or what was yours?
Some slight clarifications there. Just clarifications. For example, when I say that I think that it went to Alpine City, but they declined it, it really went to Alpine City administrators versus Alpine City Planning Commission and City Council. So it's little things like that clarified.
Okay. I'm good with that then.
And Lon, I sent some corrections over as well. Again, they were more just minor corrections per the recording, basically, not.
Okay. So when I make this motion, and when I've made it in the past, if it's been content change, I think we all ought to hear that versus spelling and grammatical. So I move to approve the consent calendar with those changes as noted by Jason and Greg.
Okay, we don't have a second yet.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Greg Gordon. Motion made by Lon Lott. Without any further question, we'll go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Um, well, we reserved a few minutes for public comment. Austin, do we have anyone on the YouTube portion that is requested to make comment?
Let's see, on YouTube, we so far do not have any comments on there.
Okay.
And
Just can you see how many people are viewing? Does it tell you?
it says 3 people are watching.
Okay. Okay, so without any further public comment, we'll wrap up that portion of our meeting and move on to reports and presentations. Shane, do you want to give us a financial report?
Just real quick, we're just winding down the fiscal year. We still have some invoices coming in. So there's not a lot different to report from last time, but I think everything's fine. And we're starting to get all the documentation and everything together for our audit, which will probably happen sometime in August. So
That generally takes a month of August.
yeah, Greg Gogden's usually at City Hall for a full day and maybe part of another. We provide him a bunch of information before he gets there that he goes through, and then he talks to several of us while he's here. So we'll probably have to adjust our budget a little bit for this year, and we can do it towards the end of the year for this Pioneer Drive project, because the paving, instead of happening in June, ended up happening in July. But it's all money that's earmarked for roads, so it won't be a big deal. It's just sitting there now, and whether it's in one budget year or another, it's not a big deal. So
Anything else on that, Shane?
nope.
Just a quick throwback to item J on the consent calendar. When do we see that road happening, that pavement project?
We'll get the signed contract to them tomorrow, and then it will get into their scheduling. So I'll be able to give you a better idea. I know this particular company has a scheduling meeting every week. So I think it's on Wednesday, so we might have an idea after tomorrow where it would fit in. So.
Okay. Item A, resolution R2020. This is something we moved fairly quickly on. David, do you want to talk about this, or Shane, do you want to start?
I can just briefly introduce it. So what we're looking at here is amending and clarifying our general plan and maybe some of our land use ordinances that would pertain to gateway connecting roads into and out of our city. We put this resolution together to just kind of put people's, citizens, interested parties on notice that this is happening. Any new land use applications that have a connection to outside of our city would not be heard for the next 180 days unless things are finished up prior to that time. So existing connections that are already there, substreets and things like that, this does not apply to. So this would apply to just newly proposed streets. David, you can probably explain the state code side of this much better than I.
Yeah. What the law allows us to do is put the public on notice that we're undergoing a process. And once we take this official action to officially start the process, that precludes people from rushing in and trying to file applications while the process is going on. The limitation is that that's only effective for 180 days. The law gives us 180 days to finish the process. So we in effect can hold off applications that will be affected by the proposed changes during that interim period of time, but no longer than the 180 days.
And that 180 days starts on what day, David?
It starts right now.
Today, when this is adopted?
Right.
Okay.
I had a question on this that you can probably answer, David. Does this strengthen our legal posture relative to Summit Point?
No, pending applications will not be affected by this. This is just a way to keep people from racing us to the finish line with new applications. And it also puts people on notice that the process has started so that they can give input and know that we're looking at our general plan. We have to send out notice of intent to do these things to certain affected entities as well, such as bordering cities and various districts that may be affected one way or the other. So this just is an official start of the project.
So David, that means Shane will be noticing Utah County, Highland, Draper.
I think Austin has already sent out a notice of intent to start.
Does this also mean then, as far as the 180 days, is that a time limit we must be done by then?
Oh, no, you don't have to be done by then. But if you're not done by then, any application that is filed will be processed under the existing ordinances, not the new ones. This gives you a chance. This keeps people from trying to file applications not knowing that it might change the law. But there is an outside limit.
Okay.
Well, I have a question. Will this affect at all the development that's coming up, number 2, with the boundary line adjustment to Highland City, with regards to they're not able to develop that and create the secondary access through Alpine by us approving this right now?
If it's a pending application, it would not affect it.
And I don't think it's an application yet, right, Mayor?
No, I don't think so. Shane,
So what's before us tonight is the application to adjust the city boundary. Because in this particular case, there's about 1/3 of the property that is in Alpine and about 2/3, might be 3/4, 1/4, that's located in Highland City. And for them, and probably for both cities, it's best if it's all in one city or the other. There's some reasons why it probably should be served by Highland, that being the water rights that are currently being used on that property and their ability to provide sewer service to it without a pump. And so that's on there tonight. There is an existing stub street that goes down into this area that, it appears that it was planned to connect somewhere at some point in time. So
my question is, if we approve this resolution right now, does that prevent this road from going through based on?
It should not if it's an existing stub street. We provided for that, I think, in the resolution that this only affects new, if I recall right.
yes, that is correct.
it would be the same as if the stub at the end of High Bench at the south end, if that were to be developed during this process, it would also be allowed because we've already planned for it.
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion if there's no more comment.
Is there any other comment? Please, Jason.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 2020-9 to begin the process of amending the city's general plan and applicable land use ordinances as they pertain to gateways connecting roads into and out of Alpine City.
Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jason Thielen, seconded by Lon Lot. Any further discussion? The point that I would add is that I think, we want to make sure, to me, it's a high priority to get this done well within the 180-day timeline. And so I think periodic work sessions, and David, I just want to make sure we're abiding by all the state laws for public gatherings, but they're public meetings. If we have 2 council members present, we're okay. But even on a topic like this, if we have more than that, we'd have to have an announced meeting in minutes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is maybe put together periodic work groups with alternating members of council so we can address different sections of the master plan and make sure that we're covering all our bases. And then obviously periodically have it on the agenda for a city council meeting so that we can kind of finalize those measures.
Of
So I'd
course,
like
the process required by state law on master plan amendments is that the planning commission go through the process first to make a recommendation to you. The planning commission is going to be required to hold a public hearing on it at least before it gets to you. So make sure you're not taking away the planning commission's prerogative with your city council activities.
Okay, so that actually addresses one of the questions I had for you, David, is since we have a proposed master plan already, and that's what we're going to be working from, that the planning commission has already gone through its phases to instruct. Do we still need to send it back to them, or can we take the revised plan now and act on it?
Well, I don't think the planning commission made recommendations on these things that you're.
Okay.
And if you're amending some ordinances, they're going to have to go through the planning commission for a recommendation as well, and a public hearing of the planning commission.
Okay.
But to the mayor's point, Mr. Church, we're obviously not here just to approve what the planning commission has given us. The planning commission did their best job. At this point, we take it, we can modify it up at this point. But I'm just a titch confused on the back and forth that has to happen. Does everything that we decide to want to do have to go back to planning commission for their approval?
No, they don't make any approvals. They only make recommendations.
Okay, so they've given us a document full of recommendations now. We are going to look through those, or we're going to modify that up to some degree. Do we have to send those modifications? I mean, I'm trying to understand what the approval process is that we have to send it back to the planning commission.
Well, I thought that this idea that whoever came up with that we're going to amend the general plan as it deals with gateways was a new idea that the planning commission hadn't sent to you before or discussed. If this is something the planning commission's already gone through and recommended, then great, no problem.
So you're saying that specific piece of it should go through the process again?
I'm saying that why did we do this resolution if this isn't starting a new process?
Okay.
I mean, that was the instructions I got specifically from Shane, and he said he got from Mayor Stout, who said, we are starting this new process and changing this master plan to answer these things. So, I mean, otherwise, why didn't we just adopt, why didn't we just put the general plan on and start working on it? I'm confused about where we are on the general plan. I haven't seen it on the city council's agenda since, what, December?
Well, then maybe I can do a follow-up on that question then. This is one item of many items that we may modify, we may change, we may ask to go a different direction entirely maybe than the planning commission. This is just one of them. So on a different item, maybe it has to do with parks, maybe it has to do with density related statements, maybe it has to do with a wide spectrum of things. We have this document now from them. Do we then need to come up with all these ideas and send them back to them? I'm just wondering.
No, but if you want to plow forward with this without their input, that's fine. I'm just saying, when was the last time the general plan was on your agenda to review and that the planning commission has set up? My memory may not be that good, but I don't think I've ever seen the planning commission's recommended general plan put before you, just pieces of it.
It's been quite a while since it was on the agenda.
It's probably been well over a year since it has. David, if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like if we're going to make a change to any ordinance, that either the planning commission's recommendations have or have not addressed, there still has to be a public hearing at the planning commission level. Is that right?
If it's a land use ordinance, yes.
Okay. So if we're going to amend it, even though it has been worked up by planning commission, if it's going to change the nature of a land use.
Well, the general plan is one thing. And then if you're going to also amend some ordinances, those ordinances are going to have to go to the planning commission for a recommendation. I don't know what ordinances you have in mind that you want to amend.
Okay.
But if they're land use regulations, then they need to go to the planning commission first and a public hearing at the planning commission. If it's the general plan, then that's a similar process, but different noticing requirements.
So I guess that takes me back to my suggestion that we have some work sessions by council members to make sure that the planning commission has a roadmap of what we want them to address. And to Jason's point, I guess I'm not completely clear on the back and forth. Because
well, why are you suggesting work sessions outside the public purview? Why not? Why aren't we holding public meetings then with them?
Well, that's a fair.
That's what worries me, is that people are saying, let's get together 2 council members at a time, come up with it, and then.
Okay, that was actually part of my question, the first question about having a public meeting versus having work sessions. So obviously we can't make a decision in a work session, but we can bring individual concerns without consuming a ton of time in open meetings. That's kind of where I was trying to strike a balance is, let's not have, 4-hour-long city council meetings evolving around one topic and that's all we get to cover. When we could have a quick work session and make sure that people's individual concerns are being brought up. I just want to make sure we're abiding by all the regulations that guide our meetings in order to do that.
I understand.
Okay. Okay, well, we have a motion on the table by Jason, seconded by, was it you, Lon? Okay. All right. Any further question or comment? Jessica, do you have anything? Greg?
No, thanks.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jessica, did you give an aye? Okay.
It was
thanks.
a visual aye.
Yeah, I'm learning to read lips in Zoom meetings. So it looks like the motion is approved unanimously. Okay, Shane, you kind of touched on, we touched on this a minute ago. Do you want to explain item B? Actually, Austin, do you want to explain that?
Sure, yes. So if you'll take a look at the screen, this is the Beck Tree Farm. So as Shane mentioned earlier, there's 1/3 that's currently in Alpine, which is in the pink there, and 2/3 is in Highland, which is in the yellow. So Millhaven Homes is purchasing this land. They're actually on the Zoom meeting here with us if you have any questions for them. But essentially, this is just a resolution that's initiating a process, much like the last resolution that we just went through. And so we're just announcing our intention to adjust the municipal boundaries between Highland and Alpine. So essentially what you see on your screen here, this area, as Shane mentioned, it's probably a good idea that all of this is developed within one municipality versus 2. And so Millhaven Homes has a plan for this. It's would connect into the existing stubbed roads here, stub roads in Highland. And so we're just starting this process. This is we will be announcing this 3 consecutive weeks as a public notice. We still have to hold a public hearing on this matter. And so, by law, we're required to announce that 3 consecutive weeks in advance. The public hearing would be at a future date on the 28th in City Council. And then the law also allows for anybody, which in this situation probably doesn't really apply, but it allows for a time for protest. So if anybody were living in this boundary that's shifting municipalities, and if they wanted to complain, they have a period of time to do so. So yeah, this is basically just kicking off the process. And like I said, there is a representative here on the line if you have any questions.
I have a quick question. I know that it states in the packet that I think this is a C-140 zoning. And once we hand it over to Highland, it's going to be none of our business. But is that the intent of the builders to maintain that density?
I believe so. I believe that they were planning on, I think it was 10 homes. I don't know if, are you on the line? Tyrell, are you there?
I think you're right, 10 homes.
Yeah, I thought he was on the line. But
So
maybe.
Highland zoning's a little bit different than ours. They allow like a percentage of the lots to be under, you know, so there, it's going to be probably similar to this development to the right of the yellow box and the pink. So there will be some lots that would be less than an acre.
Okay.
But their narrative there says it will be in the R140 zone. I guess that's Highlands. But it's 10 lots on 10.2 acres according to that narrative document.
Yeah. But there will be some lots less than 40,000 acres, as I understand Highlands ordinance.
By the time you put a road in and everything, those lots, I mean, they're not going to be, you know, they're going to be a little bit smaller probably.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask it, is the plan or intention to connect Evergreen Way with 630 West there? That's been the plan in the past, is that right?
I believe that is what is proposed in Highland, yes.
It looks as though those lots around in Highland are 0.8, 0.83, 0.89, close to that 1 acre.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's no further question. I'll entertain a motion.
I just had one quick question. So when this is annexed into Highland, do we have any other, if they decide to put a cul-de-sac into Evergreen Way, I don't think that's the intention, but do we have any ability to require a through road if that were our desire at that point?
Once the municipal boundary is adjusted, it's Highland City, and they, you know, it'll be Highland City's decision.
Okay.
But my understanding is Highland has asked us as well if this is, if we're, we would accept that kind of connection. Is that not right? Or didn't they ask us?
They have shown, I mean, yes, it's implied that there is a connection there to 630 West. And so we're moving forward with that understanding.
Okay.
The purpose to make Alpine Highland is because for servicing of water for the developer, just the ease of use and development.
There's that, Jessica, but there's other issues. So if you have, and we have this situation right now in Box Elder where one side of the road is Alpine and the other side's unincorporated Utah County. It becomes a little bit of a challenge of who maintains roads and different things like that, and multiple sets of utilities in a local type and width street gets challenging. And so it makes sense from that aspect to have it in one city or the other.
Okay, I'll make a motion. Do I need your permission, Troy, or do I make the motion?
No, please, sorry, go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, I motion to approve resolution number 2020-10 to begin the municipal boundary line adjustment process of transferring property from the municipal jurisdiction of Alpine City to the municipal jurisdiction of Highland City.
Thank you, Jessica. Motion on the table by Jessica Smew. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jason. So a motion by Jessica, seconded by Jason. Any further question on the motion? Without any further question, we'll take a vote on the motion. Let's do a roll call vote, starting with Jessica.
Yes.
Jason,
Jason Thielen, yes.
Greg,
Greg Gordon, yes.
Lon.
On lot, yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Okay, item C, retaining wall irrigation.
Okay, so I'll take this one again. So our current ordinance requires a developer, or it requires when there's a retaining wall that's a double tiered retaining wall, we require vegetation in between the two walls. So if you have a lower wall and an upper wall, that area in between, it's required to have some kind of vegetation in there. And so the way the ordinance proposal that we're proposing tonight is just to kind of clarify that has to be drip irrigation, and also to clarify whose responsibility it is to install that and maintain that in the future. So sometimes we have retaining walls that are all on a private property, that becomes a private property owner's responsibility. If it's where we get in interesting situations is what, let's say 1/3 of the wall is on a private property and 2/3 is on private open space. In a situation like that, what's being proposed here is that the developer would be responsible for installing that, the irrigation, the wall, and then whoever oversees the open space would then be required to maintain that moving forward once it's constructed. And so, you know, if that were public open space, the city would then be responsible for that. And so essentially what we're proposing here with this ordinance tonight is one that we're just clarifying that the drip irrigation be the means by which that is watered. We're clarifying who's responsible for installation, and then finally who is responsible for maintenance moving forward. And that's pretty much what this is doing here with this ordinance.
Austin, have we identified how many locations there are currently in the city where the city would have to take that over, and at what average cost over, say, a 5 to 10 year period to the city? Because I understand the warranty period is 1 year, right? And then we would take it over.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the exact numbers. I know that many of these are probably situations like this are probably, it's already been worked out by one means or another, and Shane can correct me if I'm wrong. But the reason why this came up on our radar recently was for the Brookside Meadows subdivision, which is at the top of north end of Whitby Woodlands area. And they have a retaining wall there. Part of it's on private open space, but they don't have an HOA there. So typically, if you have private open space, the HOA would maintain that. In this situation, they didn't want to have an HOA, so they wanted to hand it over to the city. I think we ended up working it out with them that wouldn't be the case. I don't think it would end up going to the city, but that was our concern, and so we wanted to clarify our ordinance to avoid that situation in the future.
Mayor, my
Yeah.
my concern is as we're creating public open space or private open space, the reason we've done in the past the private open space is so we didn't have to maintain anything. And so if the verbiage in here says that if there is no HOA, even if it's private open space, then we as a city are still responsible for maintaining that. I'm a little concerned about that aspect of it.
Yeah. My assumption would be in that case that that we would require an HOA, that if it's private open space, that an HOA would be created if only to take care of those things, like an irrigation system that would have to be maintained.
Again, I'm not opposed to any of the public open space maintaining those things that we've deemed and decided that benefits the public. But if you recall on this one, they wanted to stop any trail from going through there via public trail and just have a private trail. And if they want to maintain their own trails, they can maintain their own trails and maintain their own plantings as well.
So typically where this would come into play would be a retaining wall that is there for the purpose, like a cut wall at kind of the right-of-way line. And so if it's private open space, say back away from the street, typically there wouldn't be the need for a retaining wall there. So it's kind of related to the ability to have a road there. And I think that was one of the arguments of, should it be the city's responsibility, because it's there to allow the road to be built and operational. I don't see this happening a lot.
Are there examples, Shane, where you could point out that we would situation?
Well, like Austin said, what brought this up was this situation in Brookside Meadows, which is not even complete yet. And that's the only one I can really think of right now that is in this situation.
Okay.
But to Lon's point, and I agree, the way it was before this modification, the city did not have ownership of that and wasn't responsible to pay the costs associated with it. With the new modification we have here, it opens up the door in certain situations where the city will have to take over and be responsible for the operation and warranty of it, I guess, in the future. I don't know if I necessarily like that as well.
Yeah. I mean, just to provide some background, we were in our discussions with this developer, we told them that we don't want to have to maintain something like that. And they were going to plant some kind of vegetation that it would take like a year to establish. It would have to be irrigated for the first year, but then after that, presumably it wouldn't require irrigation. I don't know what kind of vegetation it was and if that's even a true statement, but that's what they were telling us. So.
And how hard is this to maintain? It's a drip irrigation, right? So it's maybe Lon would know better. I just seems like that's pretty simple to fix these things, or is there a risk of a significant maintenance overhead?
Well, I know we've had some service projects over on Shepherd's Hill and in that area up there at where Star Tower is, and there is a drip lines put in there, and we've lost most all the trees because they weren't maintained. So, so I don't know. It's not difficult if we have the manpower to do it, but if we don't have the manpower to do it, that's one of the reasons we moved into private open space on some of these things, so we didn't have to maintain things. But that being said, I understand what Shane's saying as far as there may not be many cases at all with this situation, and this might just be a clarification enough for the handful of cases that there would exist, and that we really don't have to do any maintenance, but it just still clarifies. I don't know. That's where I'm seeing things.
The other thing I might mention on this, having a bunch of water behind retaining walls is not an ideal thing. It's not desirable at all. In fact, the drainage systems that are put in behind these walls are to get rid of that water, because that's what causes them to fail. And so, you know, if there is vegetation that can be established for a little while with drip irrigation, and then that can be cut off, that would be the ideal situation for the retaining walls.
Well, and but that's not a requirement in this amendment, is it?
It's already a requirement. In fact, if you read just above on F, for terraced walls viewable from the nearest public right of way, the horizontal separation between walls shall be planted with a minimum of 5 shrubs for every 20 linear feet of planting area. And so that was totally put in there for aesthetic reasons.
But I guess to address your point, Shane, if the end goal is to eliminate the need for watering there, should we not state that in item F? A shrub that would not require watering after the first year or something like that?
That could be put in there, yeah.
Because to me, that actually solves the problem. You know, I think most of us are concerned about the ongoing cost in terms of man hours or dollars to maintain a system. If we don't need that system after a period of time, then that eliminates that issue.
Well, the other question I have is in regards to the original ordinance written. Was that really with, was it written in mind where it was privately owned?
I don't think that situation was anticipated in this, Jessica, where it would, you know, maybe it's on someone's lot, and then for the last part of the wall, it goes on to private open space. I don't.
So I wonder if we're gonna try to separate out this scenario, we just say in a private open space, either zero scape or some kind of alternative to the shrubs every so feet. I mean, I understand the need for it if your neighbor is building the double retaining wall behind you and you don't want to, you know, just look at that. But if it's a double retaining wall that's borders a street, couldn't we do something where it was a zero scape, where water wasn't required, where maintenance wasn't required?
Yeah, it could be done as long as, you know, you're happy with that look. I think the vegetation, the plan for the vegetation was to kind of break up this wall and make it look like it's not one solid wall, even though it's terraced back.
But isn't that just a developer responsibility? If they want something to look a certain way, then maybe an HOA that would then maintain it over a long period of time would make sense.
So the reason why this ordinance, the ordinance, like the ordinance, what we were reading in F, the reason why that's there is because Summit Point, a long time ago, someone decided they wanted to build a road from Hog Hollow Road up to the top of Lakeview Drive and put in a bunch of retaining walls there. And they would have had to do these big walls with many different tiers that would go up, and they didn't want it to look like a big wall. You know, made it just look like one giant, huge wall because, you know, from a distance. And so the idea was, the city wanted, this is the city's council's decision, let's put some vegetation in there to break that up so it doesn't look like a massive wall. And so that's the whole reason why we even have this requirement for vegetation in between tiered retaining walls like that. So, I mean, it would be going away from that decision that the city council made those years, many years ago.
But again, that was in relation to private property, correct? Like that wasn't a responsibility or a cost that the city would then bear. That was then on the homeowner to bear that cost.
In that situation, it was, to my recollection, the retaining walls would support a public road, therefore they would be the responsibility of the city.
Okay.
Is that right, David or Shane? You remember back?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, in most situations, the private open space is going to be maintained by an HOA. So the Brookside Meadows was a unique situation where they said, we don't want we're not going to have an HOA, but we want private open. It was already approved for private open space.
Well, another solution to that would be that if you have private open space that has terraces with this, you were required to have an HOA to maintain that.
Mhm.
I'm concerned, and to Greg's point, I try to do my drip systems every year, and it takes me quite a bit of time, and they get beat up by deer, and they get beat up by different things. I just think our city staff, our park staff are pushed to the limit, and to add anything if we don't have to, I think would be not in the best interest of the city personally.
Shane, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, is that how significant is that concern in your mind for us to take care of those things?
well, with the little pieces of public open space, we've tried to avoid those in more recent years because it is a maintenance nightmare for our staff. So I totally appreciate that here. We do have a development here that has been approved, and I guess this was an effort. It's been approved, several months ago. This was an effort to address that situation that came up after approval. And we can find a way to deal with this one if that's what we need to do. If you want to put the requirement in to have an HOA, we can do that. Seems like sometimes they end up going defunct.
Yep.
If they don't, have a good organization and people that are willing to really manage that. But
I guess that's part of my concern on the HOA level. I know I live in an area that was supposed to have an HOA, and I've lived here 18 years and it's never shown its head.
yeah,
You're right. Once the neighborhood gets set up and developed, everything's done, the HOA kind of disbands and nobody's enforcing anything. Unless they have a guard shack.
So maybe here's a thought as we move into this, though, that will help a little, is maybe we should say there in the green, shrubs shall be native drought tolerant plants, or where possible, shrubs shall be native drought tolerant plants and shall be drip irrigated to minimize erosion. So identify if they have the possibility of putting in those that after a year of some of these native drought tolerant plants, you won't even need the irrigation any longer, wherever it is. And of course, if you choose to put, I don't want to limit a person who chooses to put something that's a flowering or a decorative type plant in an HOA setting. I want to be careful not to limit with this that they can only do certain things. But if we're going to maintain it, it would be good to have the least amount of maintenance as possible.
yeah, I agree.
With that, is anybody prepared for a motion?
Well, I just had one more question there. So could we just remove this last part of the green verbiage there? Where it's all the same, but we remove the part that says Alpine City will be responsible after the warranty period expires. So, basically it's either going to become independent or it would be maintained, somehow by the developer, HOA, or it wouldn't be maintained at the city's responsibility.
Is it a given that if the city takes over something like a streetscape that a developer has done, that we maintain it though, Shane? I mean, we have several of those places along the highway, along Canyon Crest, where it was put in by the developer, but we now maintain it.
Yeah.
Is that a given, or do we need to spell it out? Because if Greg's suggesting that we drop it out of this particular spot, this is only in the retaining wall area, not everywhere else, correct?
Yes. So in the case of Canyon Crest, we maintain that landscaping there. It is within the right of way. Theoretically, these retaining walls should either be in the right of way or in an easement that's in favor of the city, to allow them to be there. So there's probably not a lot of difference.
Okay.
In that.
So is it a feeling of council that you're ready for a motion on something like this to approve or deny, or would you rather send it back to the city to have the verbiage reworked a little bit, especially the last line?
I tend to agree with what Greg Gordon mentioned. Maybe I can make a motion and see how it goes.
Okay.
Basically, it's going to be what Greg said. Make a motion.
Oh, Jason, you've been muted somehow.
I'll make a motion that ordinance 2020-30 be approved with the modification in section 5, letter F, where shrubs shall be watered. Well, the removed part will be shrubs shall be watered by drip irrigation to minimize erosion to property owners, not Alpine City, and it'll be modified to be, quote, shrubs shall be drip irrigated to minimize erosion. The responsibility of drip irrigation resides with the property owner on which the majority of the structure is built. If the majority of the structure is built on private or public open space where no HOA is present, the pressurized irrigation service and drip irrigation system shall be installed by the developer, who will be responsible for the drip irrigation maintenance and operation after the warranty period expires.
Bonnie, were you able to get that?
Yes, I will listen to the recording again too, because that was long.
Okay. All right. So Jason has made a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a second by Greg Gordon. Up for discussion. Any other thoughts on the motion as it's been proposed?
Yeah, the only concern on that one would be the developer will be gone when he's sold all the lots.
Yeah.
and will not be around. So that's going to be a hard one, I would guess, to hold someone accountable.
I think that's right, Alon, but I guess their option there is either they maintain it or they abandon it. In other words, they get mature trees that no longer need the drip irrigation, or they have drought tolerant plants, or something like that, or they would need to maintain it. But but the city wouldn't take that responsibility, I suppose, and under this verbiage. Is that right?
But if they abandon it, then somebody's got to take care of it. It's probably going to default to the city anyway. Right? I mean, David, do you have any thoughts on what cities have done to enforce the ongoing need for an HOA to take care of things like this?
Well, there's really two issues. The one is, as Shane pointed out, if it's a facility that we're required in our public right of way, we have some limited authority to require landowners to maintain and landscape. The best example of that is our park strips. Those park strips that we're all used to watering and mowing are actually on city property, and we have authority under the state code to require people to keep those up and maintain them. Where we don't have an owner that's directly there, like Shane was saying on Canyon Crest, most cities have a procedure if they're requiring landscaping, if they think it's important to have landscaping within their public right of way, they're maintaining it. The cities are. And so you see like those planted islands in Highland, or you see those long strips in South Jordan that are outside people's yards or backyards that nobody can get to. Those are city crews that are mowing and fixing those. So where we've got these retaining walls that are part of our road system, we need to decide how important is it that we have landscaping between those to break up that retaining wall. If it's important to the city, there's going to have to be some minimum level of city maintenance on it, because otherwise there is no landowner to put it on. As pointed out, the developer will be an LLC that'll be wrapped up and disappeared at the end of the project. So I really think the key question is, how important is the aesthetics of these walls? If it's important to a city, then cities may take either where you have these orphaned kind of pieces of property, the cities have to bite the bullet and maintain it.
Well, I think it's important that we make them as pretty as possible. So maybe we move back to just taking care of it if there's only going to be a few of them.
I think the key thing is what Shane said is we want to control the watering of them anyway. If these are retaining walls that are there to serve as part of the public street system, we don't want people controlling the water.
So the way it's worded right now then, Shane, is the developer then would pay for the connection, the water connection, get the water connection into a location as needed. And all of the financial aspect of that, water meter, connection fee, things like that.
Yes, and that is the other part of this that we kind of haven't focused on tonight, but this edition doesn't specify that they pay for that, where before that was not specified, and that did come up in this case.
That's a good thing to have, because we don't want to lose, if we don't want to lose that revenue, the revenue that comes from the connection, one, and us have to put it in ourselves, because then we have to have that expand. So I'm just, as far as from where I started at the beginning of this conversation, if it is in our right of way, can we just simply, I'd hate to maintain a wall that's back in somewhere that isn't part of what we're even having to deal with. If the verbiage in this gives somebody the latitude to say, oh, well, yeah, you got to take care of this wall that's back here 500 feet away from the road, I'd rather not do that.
Yeah.
Could we add something to clarify and say when in public right of way?
Yeah.
I like that.
But just so I understand what Lon was saying, about lost water revenue. Are you talking about who pays the pressurized irrigation or the water cost to water those? And if they're on private open space, whose name is that in if there's not an HOA?
Well, in some cases, the private open space, for example, the Rigid Alpine, that private open space remained in an entity of Steve Zollman. It has now sold and it's in some other person's name. So it depends on how the private open space was handled.
Most often on the private open space, it ends up being owned in common by the lot owners, whether they have an HOA or not to manage it and assess how they do it. If the private open space is going to be improved in any way and watered, then we really should aid the future homeowners by requiring upfront the HOA get created. And then if they don't maintain their HOA afterwards, that's up to them. But Jason makes a good point. There will be an owner. There's always an owner of the private open space. If there's not a separate owner listed, the way the plats work and the state code works, that property is owned in common by the lot owners in the subdivision.
Yeah.
My motion, Mayor, that it might be better to do what you mentioned, maybe push it back to the Planning Commission, letting them know that we have some concerns on everything from the city not taking responsibility. Again, my concern is that a year from now, the residents there are going to be really mad at the city because their property's dying and that area looks bad, and they're going to want to be a priority over a park because it's right there. I want to take that away from the city and give it back to the HOA. Maybe they require an HOA. As far as water revenue, how it's attached to that, there are some concerns there, but it'd be better to push it back to them with that understanding. Thoughts?
I think it's a good idea to get it back to them with recommendations on the language you'd like to see rewritten, what areas you'd like to focus on. And you can make that motion, Jason, if that's what you'd like to do.
Even though it's already been seconded?
I think the rules of order that you can make a secondary motion, correct, David? And we would have to.
Yeah, you could make a substitute motion, see if that's seconded, vote on the substitute. If it doesn't pass, then you go back to the original.
Substitute takes precedence.
will be voted on first, yeah.
Yep. So is there a?
And just, I just had a question for, Jason there. I think what we're saying here is, if there is going to have to be this infrastructure in place on the shared, private open space, there needs to be an owner. There has to be an HOA to maintain that, so that it's not doesn't just fall into default and becomes the city's responsibility. Is that what you're saying, Jason?
Yeah, I think that solves a lot of the problem.
Okay, so do we have a substitute motion, or would you like to continue with the first?
I'll try for a substitute motion. Okay.
Okay.
I made a substitute motion that we push back to the Planning Commission Ordinance 20-14 to be revised based on the following direction. One, that we want to take Alpine City out of the responsibility of maintaining this property in the future, period. Two, that there needs to be an owner of public and private open space, and that owner needs to also be responsible for water revenues and costs associated with using that pressurized irrigation. Three, continuing with the idea of a drip irrigation system to minimize erosion, and emphasizing, if possible, where possible, the use of drought-resistant vegetation to minimize future watering needs. If anyone wants to add to that after a second.
Okay. Do we have a second on the substitute motion?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Drought tolerant. And also though, if it is public open space, though, I would assume should be responsible for our own after it's installed. But so when you said that, Jason, that you'd do both public and private.
You're correct, Lon.
Okay. So I'm good with that though. I think going back with those points, we'll come out with a more clear, recommendation that would help.
Yeah. David, do you have any thoughts to add?
No, I think it makes sense that the planning commission look it over.
Okay, all right. So we have a substitute motion on the table, also authored by Jason Thielen, seconded by Lon Watt. Any further question on that motion? All in favor? Let's take a roll call. Sorry. I heard say aye. Greg.
Lon Lott, aye.
Okay.
Jason Thielen, yeah.
Jessica?
Jessica Smuin, yes.
And just to clarify, Greg, you voted yes, correct?
Yeah, Greg Gordon, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. We'll be sending that back to the planning commission. Item D, for planter strip requirements. Shane, on this one, or Austin, I was looking for the Alpine tree guide, but I couldn't see that in the packet. Did I miss it?
It was previously approved.
Okay, but
It's
right.
it's on the homepage of our website. Yeah, we probably should have put it in the packet for reference, but it's on the homepage of our website.
Okay. I remember us addressing this as a city council 5 or 6 years ago, at least. Shane, have we seen any improvements in lifted sidewalks, things like that?
It's in its infancy. It's actually, we started talking about it years ago, but I think it was only approved, Austin, what, in the last year, maybe 2?
Yeah, it was
Like
probably,
that.
yep, that's accurate.
Okay,
It,
I think we voted on it a long time ago.
yeah. So, we've been able to get the word out to a lot of people, and I think it will be years before we'll know if it helps. So we hope it does.
Just for the record, my eastern redbuds haven't done anything to the sidewalk.
Great.
Okay. Austin, are you going to take this one?
Yeah, so let me just go ahead. So this is really, honestly, it's a simple change. Our ordinance just used to refer to an approved list, and staff used to keep a list on hand. But now that we have the officially adopted tree guide, we just want to make sure that that's referenced in our ordinance. And so that's what we're doing here.
Pretty straightforward. Is anyone ready to make a motion on this?
I would make a motion, I suppose, but I'd like to see something a little more in here as it pertains to a corner lot, that any tree planting on a corner lot should comply to the site triangle. I would like to see that in another place, even though we have it in our site in different street ordinances. I personally would like to see it in one more place saying that they can't plant, that they need to comply to that guideline.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Lon. And I think, I've got a few homes in mind when I think of this, but there are plenty of homes in the area that have planted a tree like a spruce or a pine. And the site triangle is great when it's planted, but as that tree grows, it basically covers up the entire triangle.
So if I could, I'll make a motion. If I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2020-14 with following insert, as proposed, with the following insert in section 3, item 4, to state street trees shall be planted at least every 50 feet. Any trees planted on corner lots will comply to site triangle requirements. Street trees shall be selected from the Alpine City Tree Guide.
Bonnie, how you doing there? Did you get that?
Got it.
She muted herself.
Oh,
I said I have it.
Okay.
okay, good. Good deal. Okay, Salon has made a motion to pass with amended language. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Jessica Smuin has seconded the motion. Further discussion or question on the motion? All in favor, starting with Lon,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. We go to the last item on our agenda for the discussion items. Let's see. Okay, Shane, I'll have you introduce this. Jason and I talked about it earlier, and so I think well, just go ahead and take it away, Shane.
Yeah. So the North Utah County Aquifer Council was actually originally named something else, but in more recent years, the name was changed to this, and it was some issues with the state auditor's office that kept giving us problems that it was changed. Anyway, most of the cities have a representative. It's a technical committee that is looking kind of to the future, looking at the potential of groundwater recharge projects. For example, taking winter water that would normally flow to Utah Lake, letting it go into, say, the debris basin at the mouth of American Fork Canyon that is very porous. Water goes down and then can be pumped out of the ground later through wells. So those are the kind of things that are looked at here. It's really technical. In most cases, it's the city engineer or public works director that is their representative of this committee. They've recently asked that things be the membership be created by a resolution of each city. Even though this has been in operation for several years. I don't know if they've had issues with multiple people coming from cities or what the deal is, but they just wanted to formalize this council. So Jed's been attending those meetings for probably the last 3 years. I attended before that. And so we propose that he be officially the city's representative, and that I would be the alternate representative if he could not be in attendance.
Any other questions on why it would be Jed and Shane? Okay. Then
Make a motion that we approve resolution number R 2020-11.
Motion by Lon Lot. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Greg. We have a motion to pass by Lon and seconded by Greg. Any question on the motion? All in favor, starting with Greg?
Yes.
Lon?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
By the way, if anyone ever wanted to attend these meetings, you're more than welcome to, but I would highly recommend you bring your pillow.
exciting content. Okay, let's move on to staff reports. We're going to have a need for executive session later on in the meeting if somebody could be prepared to make that motion. Let's have Chief William. Would you like to start? You had some excitement in town a few days back.
Oh, yes, all right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity just to address you for just a couple of minutes. As some of you know, a few days ago, was it last week? Yeah, I think it was last week.
Yeah.
Last Thursday, I believe. We had some excitement in town right on Main Street, and then pushed up into the neighborhood where on Shepherd's Hill and the neighborhoods behind that. Lehigh had gotten into a pursuit with some individuals that were committing crimes down in their city. And they chased the individual into Highland. The individual wrecked their car that they had stolen and ran it down into some neighborhoods into Highland and stole a second vehicle from a Highland resident, and then ran up into Alpine and wrecked the car right there on Main Street at about 450 South. Once he wrecked the vehicle, he got out and started running up through the neighborhoods, and we ended up giving chase. Obviously Lehigh was part of that, and then a few other agencies came up to assist us. It took us roughly about 3 hours. We were finally able to locate the individual who was in pretty rough shape. By the time we got to him, he had been dehydrated. He was injured in the accident, and the second one he was involved in. And he had enough. So actually one of the neighbors had spotted him and had called us, and we had come back around and took him into custody and then turned him over to Lehigh. So, you know, the great thing about working and living in these communities is yesterday, Monday, we had a card, a very large card with most of the residents that had signed it and thanked the officers for their response to the area and the way that they had handled the situation. They brought in boxes of donuts and made a donation to the police department. It was actually really nice. So we really appreciated it. But all turned out well in the end. And we just appreciate Mayor Stout, you got involved. We have a vehicle, one of my lieutenant's vehicles, air conditioning was on the fritz, and you got involved and went and grabbed everybody some water. And we just really appreciate the support that we had from the city at that point. So
Those guys were working hard. I saw K9 units. I saw pilots of drones. I saw an airplane in the air. There were probably 30, I would guess 30 to 35 cars from multiple different agencies filling the neighborhoods. It was a pretty high level response. You guys did a great job.
We did have response from the sheriff's office, from American Fork, Lehigh, and ourselves that were involved in that. So we were happy that things turned out the way that they did. So
Yeah, I even saw Saratoga out there.
yeah, it's true. They brought one of their dogs up. That's true.
Yeah. Well, thank you for a great response. Came to a happy ending for all of us anyway. Not necessarily for the suspect.
Well, he had kind of been asking for it, I guess. You can't steal two cars and get away with it. You know,
Well,
justice did prevail.
he's obviously a very bad driver. All right. Thank you, Chief. Anything else?
You bet. No, that's it.
I don't think I saw Reed on the call.
He's on. He had a call he had to go out on, but he has been listening here.
Okay.
Fire, so.
Okay. Chief Reed, if you're on and you have anything to say, feel free to take the podium. Okay. Let's move on to Bonnie. Do you have anything?
No, I just appreciate everybody emailing me the corrections.
Okay, great. David, do you have anything?
Yes. At the last interim session of the legislature, they made a change to the Open and Public Meetings Act as it deals with these electronic meetings that we're holding in anchor locations. As you remember, typically when you have an electronic meeting, you're required to have an anchor location, which is a location where the public can come, listen, and participate It is the place from where the meeting is held. When the crisis started, the governor in his executive order, one of the things that he did was provide that the requirements for an anchor location for a meeting like this would be suspended and waived. The legislature has now changed the law, and so it now specifically says that the only way the requirements for an anchor location get suspended for an electronic meeting is if the chair of the body makes a determination in writing that an anchor location is not in the best interest of the public, and identifies in the determination the reasons why an anchor location is not in the best interest. And then the amendment also says that determination cannot last longer than 30 days. So if we're going to continue to do these electronic meetings, we're either going to have the mayor make a determination each 30 days that identifies exactly why it's not possible to have an anchor location. That determination has to be made part of the public record and read into the minutes of each meeting. The solution to that, of course, is that we have an anchor location. That would require under our ordinance to have a quorum present at the anchor location. We could amend our electronic meeting ordinance to get rid of the requirement for a quorum so that we could establish where we had an anchor location and had the recorder and some, maybe the mayor there, whoever, whatever council members want to be there, and spread people out in that location and comply. Or obviously, if the mayor wants to make a finding each month, there are facts to support it that an anchor location is not possible, then we could do that as well. But we should plan on that. I guess it was important to some members of the legislature, at least a majority of them, that the public be able to participate more than just always online. So David, I guess it's possible then that the mayor and 3 council could occupy the chamber, and the other 2 council members could join electronically, and that would meet the criteria. yeah, and it's possible that we amend our own ordinance. There's no requirement in the state law that a quorum be present at the anchor location. We put that in our ordinance. We could amend that ordinance where the mayor and say the recorder or meeting host or whatever is present at the city hall, and members of the public could come there if they wanted and be physically distanced according to whatever requirements are there at the time, and people could show up there and sit and make their public comments and participate and watch.
So in the interest of time, because I mean, we'll have to do something probably for our next meeting. So 2 questions for you, David. A, when does this go into effect? Is it immediate?
Well, it's been signed by the governor. I checked the state thing. It was passed in the last interim session, signed on June 24th or something. So I know I've been getting some emails from others wanting me to write them up a notice. So I think it's going to be in effect. I think actually, you see, I actually think the governor's order allowing us to skip the anchor location has expired, in that emergency order.
Okay, so my second question then is, in the interest of time and moving through it quickly to enable us to make those adjustments, does that have to go through any part of planning commission, or is this an order?
No, only land use things.
Okay, good.
Deal with planning commission. Yeah, so what we need to do at our next meeting, we should set it up, whether it's electronic or partly electronic or not, it should be set up at our meeting hall and socially distanced. I think Utah County is what, in the yellow anyway?
Yes.
And so that means gatherings of up to 50 at social distance, or?
Mm-hmm. The challenge is spacing in our small room, but if we could adjust that and eliminate the piece where we have to have a quorum present, then I'm comfortable going to the building and up to 3 council members being there, or even fewer, 2 council members, and having everybody go in electronically so that we can have the public attend. Can we have that ready for our next meeting to vote on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's make that our first order of business in our next meeting. Great. David, anything else?
No, that's all I've got.
I can't believe you didn't tell us to find another attorney.
You'll find one.
All right. Let's move on to Austin. Do you have anything?
I just have a couple things. So one, the municipal recreation grant that we had told you was canceled is actually back on. Mistake from the county, but it was never done away with. So we still have a little. It's like $5,000. So, but it gives us something to do. You know, we can apply that to. We've been using it for the trails these last few years, and it gives us that option moving forward again this year. So that we have that, and they've extended the deadline. So normally it's the end of the year is the deadline, and now it's into sometime in the spring, early summer next year that we have to use that money. So there's that. And then the other thing, I have sent everybody an email for the executive session. So it's a separate link. It'll be a separate Zoom link. So just so you're aware of that.
Okay. And on the note of that grant, I can think of a few bridges in Lambert Park that could use some repair unless we can get that done through the Trails Committee. There's a couple that are becoming kind of dangerous there that we need to address. Okay, Shane.
Okay, we've had several inquiries about putting the volleyball nets back up. You okay to give that a try?
I think we should.
Okay, we'll do that. We discussed the possibility of having a fireworks show for Alpine Days. Is the council still wanting to go that direction? Or?
Boy, I'll open it up to everybody else to speak, but I was really surprised to see American Fork go forward as aggressively as they did with their activities. It seems like there's a little bit of a recipe for disaster there. What do you guys think? Jessica?
When do we have to decide? Let's see what happens 2 weeks after the 4th.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that could be pushed later in the year too. It doesn't have to be on the traditional, second Saturday in August or whatever it is. It could be pushed later.
On that note, we could have like a send-off the night before school starts, because I read your email about, with the Alpine School District's policy moving forward, they're going to start school and with daily attendance. So maybe we correlate at that with sending the students back to school. Just a thought.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not in a hurry to create any need for public gatherings right now. It just feels dangerous. And I look at the numbers and how they've spiked, and I just feel like, I know we have it throughout Alpine. There's several families I'm aware of who've been battling with it. And it just seems like any reason to gather is going to be another invitation for us to spike at this point.
Would we consider doing it in 2 locations to spread out more?
That is something that we've discussed as staff. We haven't talked with, I think I did mention it to Chief Thompson, but not in any detail, but it's something that could be done.
I think it was around Memorial Day that the Bay Area did some fireworks. In their parks, they had these large circles chalked in the grass to kind of separate groups. And so, to that point, Greg, I think we could theoretically space everybody out pretty well over 2 different parks and have pre-chalked areas for people to stay in. I'm not sure if those chalked areas would still be there when we finish, but it would be at least an attempt.
Okay.
If I was just chiming in, I would err on the side of caution. I mean, I would say that this year, if we didn't do a fireworks show, we'd do a twice as good one next year. And that might not be the worst thing considering the environment we're in.
Yeah. We could save it for vaccination day.
Yeah.
Because that's going to become a national holiday when it happens.
Okay. Any more on that? Good. Okay, we have our request for proposal put together. We're just kind of putting the final touches on it for new city attorney. So we'll send that out to the council soon and get if you can turn comments, I'll give you a day or so to turn comments around, and then we can get that out and get that into hands of potential candidates. Last summer, Chief Thompson and I put together a memo to give to all contractors working in the city, just stressing the dry conditions and making sure that they have some kind of water source where they're working. We've re-upped that this year, trying to get it in the hands of all the contractors. Anyone who comes in and gets a building permit gets a copy of that memo as of a few days ago. So we're very close to getting our CARES Act funds. The county actually, we did not receive the very latest copy of the agreement. So the one that we signed, they tweaked it just a little bit. So we've got one, Mayor, for you to sign. And then within, they said probably 2 to 3 days, we should have the funds. Let's see. That's about it on my list.
Okay, did I miss anybody before we get to council? I think I got everybody, right?
Yep.
Okay, Greg, would you like to take any time?
Sure. So I noticed as we're working with the Three Falls HOA on their signs up there, could we add some, on the signs that there is no fires allowed in, public open space up there, something like that? Because I drove up there and, that's one thing I didn't see between all the signs is, a no fire sign. And I can just imagine people thinking they can go up there and camp and light a fire or, maybe do fireworks or something. So I thought that may be useful to help prevent some of these fire risks up in our hills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Greg. That it?
That's all. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, Jessica?
I don't have anything tonight.
Okay. Jason?
Nothing from me.
Lon?
Yeah, Shane, could we find a little money to take the corner of Canyon Crest and Ridge where Neilman has made such a beautiful area there along that side, and us just clean up that little bit of a corner now, just scrape it out, maybe put some weed barrier and rock down and just make it clean?
Yes, that's something we've actually talked about.
Okay. It's looking really nice there, and that's the last bit of ugliness.
Yeah, they've done a nice job on that property.
Then if we could just get the one down in Highland behind the sidewalk taken care of. It's a little rough.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I have right now.
Thank you, Lon. Mentioned it jokingly a while ago at the guard shack. I've heard ongoing complaints, including from a client of mine who I was meeting with earlier this week, last week, and he just brought it up that because they're looking for a home in Alpine, and his wife and a couple of friends drove up to Fort Canyon, and they were stopped and told that it was a private road, and told that they would be trespassing if they left the road anywhere, really. At least that's what they heard. Now, I can't verify what was actually said. That was the impression they were left with. And because he asked me first thing, he said, "Hey, aren't you the mayor of Alpine?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, my wife had this situation up there, and I just wanted to know for sure, is that a private road?" I said, "Absolutely not." He said, "Well, my wife and her friends were stopped and told that it was, and that they needed to turn around." So, we've talked about this in several meetings in the past. I think we really need to start taking a serious look on whether we not want that guard shack to be there in the middle of our road or not, and to extract it if needed or turn it into something else. But right now it's being used to create a perception that isn't correct.
Mayor, I've been up there several times this past week. I've never seen anyone at the guard shack.
Yeah, I actually checked it yesterday. Nobody was there myself.
I don't know when they're going through, if it is nighttime or when, but I'd be interested in knowing when these occurrences are.
Yeah. Is anybody else from council?
If they have a specific time they're doing that.
Yeah, and it would make sense that they're there doing that just before nightfall, for example. You could understand trying to protect their equipment, but has anybody else heard anything similar or to the contrary recently?
Well, I thought Shane had mentioned that he was going to have a meeting with the homeowners association and maybe a few council members or the mayor. I can't remember where that's at, to get some clarification on what's going on.
No.
Yeah, we talked about that. That has not happened, but I have heard conflicting information coming from others. I know they've met within their group. Anyway, I think we still need to get that meeting, and I'll see if I can get something set up with the HOA.
Yeah, if we could shoot for sometime by the middle of next week, that would be great. And get everybody together.
Mayor, I heard from a couple residents of Alpine that went up there and had similar experiences. I think these were daytime. I've been up there a few times and never seen anyone, but you hear about it. My sense is the shack kind of creates the perception that it is private and that people should stop. And arguably, the longer it's there, the bigger the shift there is to make a change to it. But anyway, that may be a perspective. But yeah, I've heard at least a few times of people being stopped and directed.
And I have been stopped myself, but that's been a while. It's been a while, and we had a conversation, and so I haven't had this experience since then personally, but it sounds like others have. So I think if it happens at all, at least even one more time, it's way too much. It's something that is an activity that's illegal and needs to stop. It's illegal for them to stop traffic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the perception might be, because I've driven there and had varying experiences, I don't hesitate. They start to step out, but I know I can drive through. So I just don't hesitate and I drive through. One time they did step out and just asked me what I was doing. And I said I was just driving through. They said, "Okay, but you can't get out." And I said, "Okay." So I do think if you don't know, that you just keep driving. If you see a person when they move toward that door, most people are going to stop.
Yeah, because the building itself creates the perception that you should stop. Okay, that's really all I had. I wanted to put out there, and I agree with Jessica that we did talk about that meeting. So let's go ahead and have it. And then David, if you wouldn't mind, maybe putting together a list of options that we have as a city, what the spectrum of our authority is regarding that. I mean, it's on our road, but I just want to make sure we're clear on what our limitations are, if there are.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, with that, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive. Would somebody please make that
I make
motion?
a motion that we move into executive session to discuss litigation, property acquisition, or
Is there a,
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
okay, motion by Lon Lot, second by Jessica. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Jason, did you vote?
I did. I said aye.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously. We'll see you in a minute.
So hang on a second. How do we come back into this YouTube thing after we're done, or do we close out of this meeting?
Close out of this. Austin sent out another email with a separate.
But I mean, when I say that, usually we go into executive session, come back into open session, and then get out of open session. Can we get out of open session right now? Can I motion that we
Adjourn.
Yes. Yes, do that. Make a motion to adjourn the open meeting.
I make a motion that we adjourn the open meeting.
Okay, and again, Jessica, do you second that? I can read your lips. She said yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. We'll see you in a minute.